Enrique von Borstel, president of Bulldog Productions, established in 1994 here in Tijuana. They're producing shows throughout northwestern Mexico and southwestern United States.
Awesome. So we're here to talk a little bit about the controversy that a note that we saw in the paper yesterday about the Morris' autobiography, where he mentions that on his last visit to TJ, he was allegedly kidnapped or attempted to be kidnapped. So from what we understand, that's now how things went down, and there are a lot of things that were lost in the transcription of this paper, right? So
really more about an article that came out yesterday and went viral, and I got a few calls and a few emails from friends and people in the industry who wanted to know if in fact it took place. And I sort of laugh a little bit when you said controversy, because it's funny to me now, a day after what all transpired. But the real story is, I like to break it down in two parts. The first part, which is the one we just touched briefly right now, that when he crossed into Tijuana, he was in fact stopped by a motorcycle policeman who right after he crossed, he blew through a stop sign, and that was really the reason that he got pulled over. And as a little bit more information, before we go into deals and we go into booking these type of artists, and obviously they're international and very well known, one of my primary requirements is to provide a very secure environment, a very secure travel itinerary for him, and obviously we took all the precautions to do so. With that said, part of our negotiations with his production team, his management team, was to provide an armed escort, a licensed armed escort for him and his crew. He was to travel in a separate vehicle, and his production crew were to travel in a couple of vans to come down here to Tijuana that day of the concert. And as part of what we had to do as our duties, we provided also a police escort for his contingency travel team that came down here. So when this all happened, when he first crossed, and obviously they went through, to Tijuana, they suddenly lost the police escort, and that's when he was stopped by the motorcycle police officer. As soon as the escort caught up with them, he took care of, informing them that he was, sort of shuttling the artist to and from the venue and back to the border. So when he came on stage, and his infamous words were, I just drove down to Tijuana and I was stopped by the police, that caused a big uproar in the concert. If he were there and we were all there at the same time, well, that was, part of, what in my mind back then was he had a Tijuana story now. And he was sort of going to brag about that story eventually down the road, which was, a little, I don't want to say funny, but I think it was part of, of the experience of producing such a big show down here, and having that as part of our historical background, after having brought him down to do a show in Tijuana. The second part of the story is, in fact, that when he finished the show, he obviously came off stage, went to the dressing room, got his things, and immediately wanted to leave and go back to the United States. In our contingency plans to get him back across, we had obviously, traced a route that he was going to take back to the border, to be queued up to, cross on a vehicle into the United States and back to Chula Vista, where he had lodging for that night. So things transpired as we planned. He got off the stage, went into his dressing room, hopped on his vehicle, and left the building directly to go back into the international border crossing. In that period, and if people who live down here, obviously there are very few highways we have in Tijuana. The main ones are the ones that are along the river basin or the river canal, the one that heads east and one that heads north.
Yeah.
So they took a wrong turn and went on one of those highways, and eventually found out they were on the wrong path. by that time, the security and the escort had cut up to them to let them know, hey, we're on the wrong path. We have to loop around to get you on the other side of the canal and get you northbound to be queued up and into the international port.
There was no scenario or
None
deal
whatsoever.
in which was involved in like a kidnapping or
None whatsoever. That never took place. Obviously, I would have known about it immediately if that had ever been even a mention of it, or something had happened like that in our city. We pride ourselves in having our plans go through on a timely manner, and unfortunately, the border wait is something that we cannot control. That was the only contingency that we did not sort of explain to them maybe ahead of time, that we can be stuck there for more than we can expect, but
Right. So, what do you think, Morrissey? Why would he declare something like that? I
have no idea.
He's obviously a pretty big fan of Mexico, and
He is. We actually were very close to booking him this year and bringing him down to Tijuana and Mexicali. We actually already had the contracts already done, and we had a date and venue, and we were ready to sort of release the information and go on sale within the next weeks of our discussions with him. He is a very big fan of Mexico. But I can't really imagine, and I can't really speak for him in regards to why he said that, or why that was, a big part of his book. Because as I read yesterday, it was sort of one of the 10 highlights that really took people or fans, back, finding out that had actually happened to him, and being so close to Tijuana or to the border in the United States. I think that was, sort of spilled over, especially where we're from.
And do you think this sort of thing would affect any further plans of bringing him back down here in Tijuana?
I would expect not. I would expect that his overall experience was a positive one. I've been to a few shows of him that he's done in the past, and I can honestly say that this was one of the best shows that I've ever seen him do. I didn't see much of it, to be honest with you, because I was working. When you're producing shows, you're dealing with all the issues of dealing with producing these shows. But the next day he had a show at the Palladium, and I drove up to Los Angeles to be, to see the shows, to sort of enjoy the music. And I was, and he did the same exact set list, maybe without the, without the jersey from the Mexican soccer team that came on at the last. But those are, I think, the unique aspects of, of going to shows in different countries and different cities, and those are the type of unique scenarios that we as a production company like to offer artists, when we do sort of like a one-night event, because that's what it really was. He routed Tijuana with his United States tour, not with his Mexican or South American tour, and it was a one-off show for Mexico, one opportunity for his fans to come and see him in a private venue, so to speak, because we could only sell 2,700 tickets, and it was a big deal. It was a big deal for me as a producer, for our company as a production company, for the artist, I think, in fact, because he was part of making this happen. I had knocked on his doors more than a few times wanting to bring him down, and this all came about, in a very organic way, and we're very happy. We were very pleased and very satisfied of what we had pulled off until yesterday. This sort of caught us by surprise and sort of threw a wrench into, what had been a very nostalgic and positive, memory for us.
And, well, I guess that will be all. Thank you for your time.
Thank
It's
you.
been a pleasure, and it's going to clear your ear about this issue.
My pleasure.